look at that pinky nail of his.
I see it.
It's not the same as his other fingernails. Am I right?
Yeah, it looks like it's been edited in some fashion.
No, it's way longer.
That's what she said.
That, my friends, is what we call a Coke spoon.
Oh, yeah, especially during his time.
You know, he was a Air Force, like a drill sergeant.
I didn't know.
Yeah. The more you know. Let me know when we're hot.
You're hot.
Oh, we're on? Are we going? All right. Well, here we are with Alan, Netty by nature, Netniss.
Hello, hello, hello. Well, I just wanted to say thanks, Josh, for having me on. Super pumped. Haven't seen you in a few months. Hope you're doing well.
I can't complain. You know, we'll edit this out.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that pumped to be here today. I think I've known you now. This year will be 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a while, huh? We started at, well, you started at Palo Alto and I was paying you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I started in third week of December of 2013, started at the Palo Alto team store, super pumped up, big Niners fan. Just to backtrack, I grew up in the Central Valley, so Turlock. So my first kind of big city was San Jose, where I moved in, lived with my sister, and then I got the job in Palo Alto. And I remember working the job, and I had a question about payroll. And I said, hey, to the manager at the time, Jasmine, I said, I missed my timesheet. I didn't, she said, oh, don't worry, Josh will take care of it. And I said, well, who the hell is Josh? I don't see a Josh around here. We don't work with a Josh. She's like, oh, he handles all the payroll. And what I loved about that is what I soon to come find out, whether I worked a 3-hour shift, a 4-hour shift, a 6-hour shift, well, by God, I was getting paid 8 hours no matter what.
Wow.
So,
seems like a hell of a deal.
Seems like, Santa Claus was watching my back or something, because I didn't know that I was just getting paid 8 hours anyways. And long and behold, it was you behind the scenes controlling the payroll.
Well, payroll's kind of tricky. There's overtime, there's double time, there's all kinds of other paid holidays that it's hard to keep track of from time to time.
Yeah. And then of course, I just remember, I got, stories are popping up in my head. We did spend a little bit of time together with each other at Candlestick as it was getting torn down. You would come in as the company was transitioning, so we needed stickers, and you were the only one that knew how to print barcodes for these items. But one specific item I had, or story, is when we moved into Levi Stadium. Gosh, 2014, around May, I think, we finally were able to work out of there. Maybe you before me, obviously. And it was just me, Rob, if you remember, a couple of other people. I don't remember their names right now. They'll come to me. And I asked you a question, because I would just, you'd come out every so often to hand us stickers, and I asked you some sort of dumb question. And to this day, you looked at me and you said, Alan, you make my hair hurt.
Ah, well, it was probably the gel or the product I was using at the time.
That's the kind of annoyance, a little pest I was, is the questions I would ask to get through the fact that I had to fold 5,000 fucking socks in one day and sticker them correctly, like some sort of indentured servant.
And it was right in that hallway. Just the pallets of clothes and everything that was lined up, and it was just...
I mean, I'll do a better job of painting the picture. Imagine you're working in a warehouse, right? And you're stickering socks, which sounds exactly what it is. Stickering socks, the most boring thing you can do. And you got all these big shots walking up and down the aisle in their suits, just looking at me as I fold and I sticker socks. I felt like I was a sweatshop associate in Hong Kong or something. I don't know. It's intimidating.
Well, you probably wouldn't have been paid for 8 hours. You probably would have been paid for 24. And,
The big difference is I was paid enough to go get food instead of, 15 cents or whatever they pay these days, the going rate.
Was always a hot dog, though.
Always a hot dog. Good times. But outside of that, like working in that stadium, the events, sitting around in our set today, like looking around, for those of you at home, you probably can't see, but there's just a lot of posters, a lot of events. Josh and I, you got WrestleMania, you've got the Super Bowl, countless concerts. I want to switch it on you, actually, and then I'll share mine. What was your favorite event at that stadium?
Favorite event? Oh, it's easy. It's that hockey game that we had, the Stadium Series.
Yeah.
The reason is well, that's the first time that I had just kind of like met my wife at that time, and so her and my sister, I was able to sneak them in. I was
Sure.
like, just dress kind of business professional, and I'll just say you're in for a job interview, right? And so they were just across the street waiting at David's to come in, and there was this news lady. I forget what her name is, but she's still down in the San Jose area. I think she used to do weather.
Okay, yeah.
And she was at David's with them, and so they were at a table, and all of a sudden this anchor lady comes over to my sister, and she's like, "Oh, I like your hair," and she does the flip. She flips her hair, kind of like it's a very catty thing to do.
Yeah.
And then it was like when my wife, now girlfriend at the time, and my sister were there. They were about to get in a fight with this lady. So I was like, oh, wow. She must be the right girl if she's going to team up with my sister,
Right.
and fight somebody else, some other bitch, And, but it wasn't just that. It was the day before that. I remember we were setting up, and, John Fogerty played the intermission during the game.
That's right.
And he was doing a sound check that night. And all of a sudden, I'm out there just, setting up all the registers or whatever. And he goes out there and does a sound check. And I think it's just somebody playing music. And I'm like, oh, all right. They got some Creedence going. And I look up and it's, oh shit. It's not, it's him. It's John Fogerty playing for a stadium of like 30 people that are working in there right now.
Right.
And it was like that moment right there was that was the one.
So the Stadium Series, I think that was in February, right? And that was San Jose against LA. Was that right?
It was the Kings. It was Sharks and Kings. Remember, because that's right before Golden Knights came around.
I'll tell one story about that event. I have my favorite event, and I'll share it. But I remember we had a worker who thought it was a great idea. If anyone that's familiar with events, merchandise is usually a hot item, whether it's a sporting event or a concert. And we had the scarves, right? The Stadium Series scarves. And they were going out like, hotcakes. Everybody wanted a scarf. And we had a genius that was working one of our stands decided to pre-sell scarves as if we were selling tickets to a concert. And the issue with that is she took money from 10 or 15 people and we had no more scarves left. So I don't know if you dealt with that or rest in peace Jay dealt with that or who dealt with that, but someone got an ass handed to them that day for that.
Yeah, it definitely was not me. I mean, I would have, I heard about that though. But I did not see any returns come around. So I think that we must have just given them credit to get something else. Or maybe we gave them a couple free hot chocolates. Remember we were selling hot chocolates out of there?
My favorite my favorite event hands down had to be WrestleMania.
Oh yeah.
And I have a couple of reasons why. At this time, our store manager was Joe, right? Joe Belger. And he came in and him and I were pretty close. And at this time, I had taken more of a position of scheduling, right? And I was not really on the floor with the other supervisors. I wasn't as close with them in terms of like doing the labor job, if you will.
You separated yourself on purpose.
I did. And, long behold, you, who was the devil on my shoulder, said to me for the event, "Are you suiting up?" And I said, I don't think, I should backtrack and say that every manager and overhead, right, like in terms of management and above, they would wear a suit on event days, whether it's a 49ers game, a concert, whatever. And so Josh would wear a suit, of course, and our operations manager and our vice president of retail. And then here I come, this guy making $14 an hour, wearing a fucking suit that he, God knows, probably picked up at H&M the night before. And I waltz in there, and the look on the other supervisors, Jeremy, Darshini, and Ben, I mean, they were fucking pissed, right? It's like, it's hard to compare it. It's like saying walking into In-N-Out burger and you're wearing a suit, but you're just one of the workers behind the counter, right? They were just like, what the fuck's going on? And so I separated myself, thanks to you.
I remember that.
So, but in terms of the event, the reason why that event was huge, I will say for me, I was a kid that grew up in a family that we didn't take family trips. We didn't have a ton of money. And so like cable was the best our family can do. So wrestling was our version of Disneyland, right? And so working that event and the night before was the most memorable because myself, you, and Tim and Jay, I believe we walked down to the stage.
I think Tim was out that time. Tim was
he already
It was probably
gone?
Joe.
It was probably Joe. You're right.
Tim was gone because remember he sent his friends and we had to kind of let them in because he had already gone.
Yeah, you're right. Gosh, man, Alzheimer's already for myself. But we went down to the ring the night before and we were all like, wow, there was that cannon that was there. If you remember, there was like a cannon that was next to the ring. I don't know. One of the people would come out with it.
Oh,
one of the wrestlers, I think.
God, I don't remember that.
But anyways, the point of what I was saying is that they were doing testing and rehearsal that night. And that was the first time that I remember I was working and I heard Undertaker's theme song. And they were rehearsing him coming out. And I was like, holy shit, dude, my whole life, watching this stuff. And the guy's reacting or he's going through the whole motions of what he's going to do the next day. And that was the first time I'm like, man, it is fake.
It's not fake. I mean, maybe the story is technically, the story is, but like those dudes get hurt.
Oh, for
like
sure.
They get the shit beat out of them. I mean, they're just really good at getting the shit beat out of them without actually getting really hurt most of the time, It's just like, because I know some people that if you say wrestling is fake,
you'll get an open hand slap.
Yeah. I mean, because it's not as choreographed as like a play or something,
Sure.
but it's,
Well, I guess I should say that the wrestling, the athleticism, taking a chair to the back of the head, flying off a ring, that's all real. But watching him with his mannerisms and the way they move is all kind of very scripted, right? Like how they want to come out. And you had a story that I always found interesting. You had grown out your mustache.
Oh,
you want to share that?
So I grew up my mustache to like a handlebar, like Hogan.
Yeah.
And kind of like lighter hair to kind of like what Hogan has. And the first time I did that, it was when they had the signing there. It was like a promotion for the event.
They had the trailers out for that, I think.
Yeah, me and Jay forgot to jack the trailer up, so we actually grinded the trailer all the way down Tasman. So there's probably still a line down there, and the city can go after the 49ers or center plate for that, but definitely wasn't me or Jay. And me and Jay are setting up the trailer, and I'm getting power on there and everything, and this guy comes and he's got this really like a flamboyant cowboy outfit on, not flamboyant, but like it kind of has like the little designs on it and everything, and he's like, "Hey, y'all got any women's larges?" And I was like, "Of what shirt?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't care. Just put one aside for me." And I was like, "Why don't you just come and buy it when we open like everybody else?" He's like, "Oh, well, I'm going to be a little busy. I'm Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South." And I was like, "Oh, of course. Yeah, we'll have it right here for you." And he was like, "Oh, I really appreciate you guys. If you need anything, you want anything signed, just come see me." And I was like, wow. Damn, he really is like a super nice dude. He chatted with us for a little bit, but the mustache, I tried to get Hogan's attention when he came for that signing.
Yeah.
And, he, you like, I saw him driving this blacked out SUV. I think it was like an Escalade. And it's like 8:00 at night, 7:38. So it's dark. He's got sunglasses on while he's driving, and he's trying to text, and he's doing this motion, right? And I can see the car coming at me. I was like, "Oh, that's Hogan." He's trying to drive and text, and he's got sunglasses on at night in a tinted, like, he's not helping himself. Obviously he parked and he was cool and everything, but then he got up there and he just, signed, and I think I got busy and wasn't able to meet him. But then once we had the event, once we had WrestleMania, I did it again. So I shaved my mustache again, just in like the Hogan style. And I was walking around all day. That's all I wanted was to see Hogan. So I see him, and he's talking to one of their producers in the downstairs, in the ring downstairs. And I go right by him, and I'm like, I give him the nod. I catch his eye, and I do this motion, right?
Yeah, playing with the mustache.
Yeah, and he nods right back to me, smiles, does the same damn thing back. Oh yeah,
that has got to be one of the coolest moments, I'm sure, for you in your life, to have Hogan acknowledge your stash. Mm-hmm. It's you guys are stash brothers.
Well, dude, like, I mean, for me, for a lot of people, it was like wrestling, right? But for me, I just liked Hogan. Like, Hogan was the man.
Right.
Like, he was absolutely my favorite. Jake the Snake, just because I like reptiles.
I mean, in the 80s, was there anyone bigger than Hulk Hogan and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone? Those are the three guys that you could honestly say are like, when you think of the 80s, you think of those three guys.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean,
in terms of like just sheer, just badass, Hulk Hogan, what a name, what a presence.
It's Terry, though, right? It's his real name.
Terry Bollea.
Yeah. He actually, he's a really good bass player, too.
Is he really?
Did you know that? Yeah.
I know.
He's pretty musically inclined.
I know a lot about wrestling. Like, I could tell you some of the other guys and like what they do, but I did not know he played bass. I know that his wife left him for somebody 40 years younger. I could tell you that.
But and I think he is with somebody new now, too, though. Right? Didn't they just get married?
He is, but in the early 2000s, after his divorce, a sex tape actually leaked of him. It's not very long. I've watched it. I searched for it, definitely. And, it was very cringe, but it was very Hogan-esque. In the video, which is very short, you could find this thing on the internet.
Was he in character?
He wasn't in character, but he had a bandana on while he was getting head. So... what was funny, though, is after he's done getting head, his son calls him, or his daughter, during this video. Like, it's like a not really well-edited video. It's like a 1-minute clip of him getting a blowjob. And the guy's texting by looking at his phone and using one finger to text, right? And it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't think he could ever not be out of character. I don't think he's Terry Bollea anymore. In his own mind, he's probably Hulk fucking Hogan.
I don't doubt it. How could you really turn it off? I mean, he had that reality TV show for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Didn't his son get in trouble for something most recently?
I don't know about most recently, but he got into a wreck that killed somebody. A DUI. He was racing a car or something.
Yeah. He had his. I want to say he had like a Supra.
Yeah. He was into racing a lot. They had that one TV show, Hogan Knows Best.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. That reality show with them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what an easy thing to get into if you have like a bunch of money, like a bunch of wrestling money, like, oh, Dad, I want a 98 Toyota Supra, like I want something that was, 30,000 new, but it's $50,000 now.
I was going to tell you, I've going back to growing up with wrestling, like these guys became real. They're icons. I had issues with, hey, do I want to watch Monday Night Football or Monday Night Raw? Like, it was a real decision in the household. What were we going to do? They're both at the same fucking time. And as you know, last year, Scott Hall passed away, Razor Ramon. He was on a show once. It was hilarious. They were talking about him and Ric Flair, how they used to do a lot of traveling to go, they do promotions, they'd wrestle, whatever. And there was a girl that went up to Scott Hall, and she was like, I have to meet Ric Flair. I have to meet Ric Flair. He's like my idol. And Scott Hall apparently looks at her and says, what are you going to do for me? And she's like, well, what do you want? He's like, well, if you meet Flair, you got to blow me. So sure enough, he gets her to meet Flair, and she blew him. And that's the thing with this. Like, if you've watched, I don't know if you've seen Iron Claw yet.
No, I haven't. No, I've watched a bunch of the recent podcasts that Ric Flair's been on.
Because he's in there
and taking he's just spilling the tea.
Yeah,
and like it was a hell of a life.
So that and The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, that's actually a lot of people don't know that movie was based off Jake the Snake Roberts' life. That's who he's supposed to be portraying. Oh,
the hard drugs, the kind of lifestyle he lived in. These guys, man. I said to you about 20 minutes ago, wrestling's fake. What's not fake is the amount of stuff they injected in their body to get themselves on the road fucking 250 times a year, right?
I mean, it's a life that you're kind of like, it's kind of like a carny, or kind of like, it's like a traveling circus, but back then when those guys were young, it was like super territorial, right? Before Vince got involved and everything.
That's true. You mentioned traveling circus. I wanted to kind of talk about one thing on my mind, which is a lot of people listening today have gone to, I would say everyone, unless you're an infant, you've gone to a concert, you've gone to some sort of sporting event, what have you, in a stadium, in an arena, doesn't really matter. You have no idea the hell that is going on behind the scenes in those stadiums, right? You've worked at Josh for a decade. I did a little bit less than you, but I mean, the amount of work it would take to get ready for an event. And for those of you listening, Josh and I worked together for several years in Levi Stadium, where we did the merchandise for not only 49er games, concerts, big events. Walk me through your thoughts of that. I mean, I could tell you from the food and beverage experience as well, too. I mean, the amount of times we ran out of tomatoes in an event and all hell's breaking loose. But people that are just sitting there watching the game have no idea that right now on the 7th floor, we are fucked. There's no more onions. What are we going to do? Right?
I mean, so for me, I was never really a sports fan. I played sports because I was made to play sports. My mom made me do all kinds of sports because she didn't want me to play video games all the time. And, when I was playing, I played baseball for a bunch of years, and I just would look for frogs in the outfield, and and then I played football for, I think, just 1 year. And, I was 11 or something, and it was fun. That was the only one that I actually had fun at.
Sure.
But it's never fun when you're a kid waking up early on a weekend and having to go run.
Well, what position were you? I got to jump in and ask that.
Center.
Wow, a center. Okay.
Center. I was center, and I played linebacker for defense because you switch off. You're not just one. But because I always wanted the ball. Same thing, because when I played baseball later on, to get me out of the outfield, to get me to pay attention.
Yeah.
They're like, well, why don't you play catcher instead? Because then you have to pay attention. You're going to just get the ball thrown at you constantly. So I did, and I kind of liked that there was the action. So that's why I wanted to do, a center. And I didn't realize that it was kind of in the NFL, it's just a boring offensive lineman, and I obviously don't fit the profile for a center, but it was fun, but I was never really I never really watched sports unless I was just watching the 49ers, Yeah. Steve Young. I would always watch Steve Young. And, then I got the chance to go and, help out at Candlestick and help out at the Cow Palace and start counting money for the games, And so I did that, and I moved on to full time, and, went into all the IT stuff, the purchasing stuff on retail, and got deep into it, and it just, I never thought that as much as I was not a sports fan, that I would have a career in sports, It's very ironic. And even there, even when we're working there, I feel like I'm the only person that really is I could give two shits about sports.
I could attest to that. I don't know how many times you would Google somebody's name and be like, hey, why aren't the Niners go after Rayshawn Jenkins? And I'm like, how the hell do you even know who that is, Josh? And it's you'd look, and the guy's Googling top players coming out of draft. It's because he doesn't know.
Yeah, but well, what about Deshaun Morris out of Atlanta State?
Deshaun Morris out of Atlanta State, he's a killer. He's a Josh's fabricated athlete that plays all sports.
Oh, you outed me there. We'll have to edit that out later.
Yeah. I will say the whole traveling circus, I got to tell you, I'm the biggest 49ers fan anybody will ever meet. I'm putting this out there in the world. Working in those events, I started to have a little bit of a disdain for the organization. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to leave. There's a lot of politics that come in working in a stadium. For the person that's casual fan just going to win a game, you don't really notice anything. You're parking, you're dealing with the expensive prices, you're taking photos, and before you know it, you're out of there. For the person that's working that event, right? Like we would get there for a 1 p.m. game by 6 a.m., right? Set up, make sure staff comes in, check them in. I mean, excuse me, but the game would end at 4. We're not out of there till 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I mean, those nights were brutal, man.
And when it was a primetime game, it was even worse.
I used to tell family members I go to work in the dark and I come home in the dark, right? We would get up at 5 a.m. and 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're headed home and you're like, shit, man, for a 3-hour event, 15 hours of my life is gone.
Well, I mean, I remember sometimes when it was you work 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. the long way.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like you work till 10 a.m. the next day. So you work 26 hours straight. And it's just like, it's so taxing. And it's just like, it's hard to drive home sometimes. You know, that's for sure.
You kind of taught me the way of the 6th day. You know, back in the days when I was still an hourly employee, you would be like, hey, that's true. You're working 12, 15 hours, but are you getting the 6th day where it's all overtime included? And so I got to say, being a hourly employee who's getting paid weekly, I was clearing more than the $22 an hour they're paying me. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, because they did have to, they bumped you up quite a bit when you moved to Levi's.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a story in itself that I probably shouldn't have grazed over it, but I worked at a little store at at Palo Alto, like I mentioned at the beginning of the pod.
It was it's a 49ers store. So,
49ers store.
yeah.
It was a boutique. It was really just a boutique 49ers store. This is before the stadium was open. This is before the stadium had its own store. And so at the time, we had the little Palo Alto store, a store in Westfield in San Francisco, and then one additional store in Valley Fair in San Jose. And basically, in that store, we weren't doing well. The Niners had just lost to the Seahawks in the championship game in 2013. The whole Crabtree, don't ever disrespect me with a sorry-ass receiver. Yeah.
Mediocre at best.
And it was such a new thing to the 49ers and center plate that they didn't realize that we hadn't put together, I was just new. I was probably a month into the job. Returns were coming in left and right. And for a rinky-dink store, I'm talking about a size of 700 square feet, like a one-bedroom apartment, we had like 15 to 20 grand worth of returns in one day in Palo Alto. And I remember looking at my colleague, I'm like, hey, this is not sustainable. How are they going to keep paying us? And we're in the negative here. And they're like, oh, don't worry, we're the 49ers. Long and behold, we had the 49ers brass come in, which was Maury Eisenberg, Umesh, and I think there was a third person there. I don't recall who. It might have just been Chris Lake that came with them.
Oh, it was probably Chris, yeah.
Chris Lake and the multi-store manager, Casey McClary.
He's out there somewhere.
Probably checking cashing a check for someone at the bank or what he does now. I'm not sure. But the point of this is they were basically like, hey, I remember exactly what Maury Eisenberg said. He said, we outgrew the business, guys, which is the biggest bullshit line you can tell someone. We're not making any money in this store. I mean, so they're closing the store down to cut to the chase, right? And at the time, it was very vague. Like, we weren't told, like, hey, don't worry, Levi Stadium's opening up, or you can go to the Valley Fair store, or San Francisco is just sorry, the store's going to close. And I'm thinking, shit, I just lost my fucking job. I just left H&M, that I worked for 5 years in retail, to come here and get laid off in 2 or 3 months. Well, this is where Josh really became what's the word I want to use here? Is the
wrench in the gears?
The wrench in the gear, the angel I didn't know I had, the big brother, the eye in the sky, where you had a buddy at the time.
Which we won't name, of course.
Yeah. He who shall remain nameless.
We'll call him Voldemort.
Basically, you had let him know, hey, this is what they're doing to these guys. The Niners are just gonna basically do nothing, and all these guys are gonna lose their jobs. And so this guy decided, let me go on Twitter, right, on the 49ers fan, main account and say, hey, why don't you guys let everybody know how you're laying off all your employees in the Palo Alto store, right? The merchandise store. Why don't you guys talk about that? And of course, the Niners being the ones in a, I'll just say it, liberal area, they don't want bad press.
Yeah, well, they kind of, it was definitely painting them in a bad light, and they kind of had their back up against it at the time, right?
So when that went down, and I actually remember that, being an avid fan, being on 49ers Twitter, not even a week later, I get another meeting with Monica. You remember Monica? HR. Don't remember her last name. And we're having this whole, conversation about Levi's Stadium. And she's like, well, have you thought about after, Palo Alto? And I said, no one's really talked to me. And all of a sudden, well, let me know what you need. We got opportunities as a suite attendant, a bartender. You want to go, retail. And so really my career was saved, and even getting to know you more, by that one single tweet. Because they were pretty much like, hey, you're out of a job, buddy, in a couple of weeks when this store closes. But once the bad press came out, of course, they moved us all over to different stores. Most of the people went to stores. I went to Levi's Stadium.
Yeah, I think pretty much anybody there was able to. I don't think anybody was actually let go.
No, Jasmine and Jessica went to
Valley Fair. They went to San Jose,
and then I went over to Levi's.
A couple other people came to Levi's, and they ended up going to like Sweets or something too.
Yeah, right. We had Eric Redwood, who's cool, one of the employees that work with me, and then Kevin, Box Kev, as Jay used to call him. Don't remember his last name.
Oh yeah.
He worked a couple of shifts at Levi's, and he said, fuck this. And basically, he's like, I have to actually work here.
It's not for everyone.
No. But honestly, I would say watching events, it's different now, Josh. I go to games. I'll be going to the divisional game here in a week, championship game, hopefully too. And it's hard to separate yourself from that life, even today, man. Like, you go there, and I look at the people, and I'm like, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. I could tell on the register. In fact, I have a story where a couple years back, went to a Niners game. And no. Yeah, went to a Niners game. I took a girl with me, right? I'm showing her off, like, look, I know everything around here, whatever. Trying to get laid. And I did.
Nice.
It's important to know I did get laid.
Shout out to
Vanessa.
All right. Thanks,
Can't
Vanessa.
share her last name. She has children, but she was a good lay. She was an NPO, actually.
Oh, ballin'.
Yeah. When I was working at the Shark, she was an NPO, and I banged her. And, I don't care if she hears that, because I gave her good dick. So I'm going to shout myself out. But
yeah, you got to give credit where credit's due.
But
for sure.
It's just hard, man. When I took this girl, we went into the Sweets, the Yahoo Club, where you and I used to go get, you'd get your sushi and I'd get my burger, right? All-inclusive club. And for those of you listening, just know that 99% of the people that ring you up in a stadium or an arena, they are temps. They have no idea what the fuck's going on. They probably just got told to go there an hour before you saw them, because the guy was trying to ring me up and he had no clue. And lo and behold, what's in front of me? Micros. I actually rung myself up at the club so the register could open and he can take my cash, because that's how lost he was.
No shit.
This is a true story. Yeah, back in 2018. Actually, George Kittle broke the all-time record for most receiving yards that game. That's how I remember that game. 2018.
Who was it against?
It was against the Broncos.
Oh, really?
December 12th, I want to say. It was the year that Garoppolo tore his ACL, so the season was lost. It was a bullshit year.
He's always hurt for something.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Garoppolo, I could do a whole segment on that guy. That guy, easy on the eyes, horrible to watch when it comes to football, right? Easy on the looks, but...
Uncle Jesse.
Uncle Jesse. I defended his ass, but you know what? If we would have had Purdy in that Super Bowl, the Chiefs would have had no fucking chance to come back. It would have been an avalanche on their ass.
Well, I mean, he kind of, he looked really good behind Tom Brady, and he looked really good when Tom Brady was out for that time when he had to, was that like Deflategate when he had to spend some suspensions?
I'll drop a nugget on you, and for everybody that, only a handful of people know this, but the reason why the Niners got Garoppolo for a second-round pick, like a lot of people don't know, at the time he was a hot commodity.
Yeah, he was.
The Browns wanted to give up 2 first-round picks for Jimmy Garoppolo back in the day. Like, they thought, oh my God, this is the heir apparent. you know? The reason why Bill Belichick made that move is basically Brady was not comfortable with Garoppolo behind him going into the next year. And Brady, who has a really good relationship with Robert Kraft, the owner, said, hey, get this fucker out of here. And they basically went to Bill and said, we got to trade him. And Bill's like, I don't want to trade him. We drafted him. This guy is good. He, after Brady goes, this is a guy. He's like, you got to trade him. My quarterback's not comfortable. Bill Belichick, when he was suspended during that time of, you recorded the Rams during the Super Bowl, you guys are cheating. Do you remember that? They were recording their...
that was even before Deflategate, right?
Yeah, but it's all going to tie together. It was all before Deflategate. Well, when that happened, they were going to make an example out of Bill Belichick. But you know who stood up to save his ass? Mike Shanahan.
Oh, really?
Mike Shanahan stood up and said, you cannot do this. This would be a bad look for our league. He's a stand-up guy. Like, don't suspend him. Maybe fine him. That was a favor to Kyle. Here you go. Here's Jimmy Garoppolo for a second-round pick because of his dad. Truly.
Damn.
That was a favor. Nobody was like, why the fuck would you give up Jimmy Garoppolo for a second-round pick to a 49ers team when you can get 2-1s for him? Well, he was just paying back Mike Shanahan for saving his ass. I mean, I could go on and on. I always tell people, Kyle's running this team with his dad. This is a two-headed monster. If you don't think that Mike Shanahan behind the scenes has influence on the 49ers, you're crazy.
I just, I know that when I think of Mike Shanahan, I don't think of the 49ers. I think of seeing his face like this, like when he was on the Redskins.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was the Redskins back then. You can say that, right?
Yeah. Redskins. On this podcast, we're calling them Redskins. We're not calling them Commanders.
Well, why do we call them the Washington football team?
Yeah.
Why would you, you're telling me that they took down that name and that's the best thing that they could come up with was the Washington football team for 2 years? That's the best thing that they could come up with?
Well, they're in talks of the new ownership that came in, Josh Harris, I think. I don't know what else he owns, but they want to change it back. But the Native Americans won't allow it. And
there's no way they'll change. There's no way they can
They
change
should
it
be
now.
called the Washington Hogs, at least, right? Because the Redskins, they were hogs. That's another thing, is their whole mantra would be the hogs.
Hogs?
Yeah, pigs, as we call them.
Because that's where the government is?
I don't know, but if you watch any Redskins game in the late 80s, it was go Hogs, go Hogs. And there's guys dressed with pig noses on. So,
really?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
I did
just
not
make
know
that up. Yeah. So the Washington football team, it's like when you go to a website to register a username and they're like, here, why don't you try this? That's the most generic sample of a name they could have given themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Commanders, I talked about this with Bob the other day. And it's just why? Why the Commanders? It doesn't make any sense. There's so many Commanders on the field. Come on.
They'll change it. I think they just need to get rid of it. I mean, look at the Cleveland Indians. They had to change their shit too. They're called the Cleveland Freedom or some bullshit now.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and they had one of the coolest logos, right, in baseball. You got to admit, the little
cartoon,
Indian,
the cartoon guy.
Yeah. The
what
baseball
was it, Chief something. Chief Wahoo or something like that?
Yeah, Chief Wahoo. It's a baseball shaped with an Indian hat on it or something, right? Their logo.
No, it was the cartoon Indian, right? It looked like a cartoon
But I
Indian.
think he's in shape of a baseball, right? It's like a face that's shaped like a baseball.
Is it? Oh.
And it has a little feather coming out of it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, haven't we done enough for them? I mean, they're fucking us on the blackjack tables. They're basically killing us on Pie Gal. They're raking our money in on slot machines. But hey, fuck you. We want our name back too. No more Redskins. No more Cleveland Indians. How about this? How about the next time I go to a fucking drive-thru and one of you guys are serving me, I say, hey, can I get an order of freedom fries instead of French fries? Let's just cut ties with every fucking thing, right?
Quite a hot take.
You don't want to get me started on that in politics because there's a lot to be said. But honestly, I mean, I don't understand who it was offending, right? I get it, the Redskins, but it's it was literally a logo of a Native American on a football helmet. It's not like we're scalping him on the helmet. It's just a logo.
I think they should have changed it to the Caucasians or something.
Yeah.
You know?
The Washington Caucasians.
Yeah. I mean, I'd sport that. I'd rock that.
Sure.
Why not?
I mean, the way the world's heading, they might need to start putting he, him on the jerseys so we so we know.
Oh, that's a hot take, Alan.
It is. We might need to edit that out. I have a job and a career and families in Colombia I support, so.
Bless your heart. What about, you remember when we had that, who was that security guard that lived at Candlestick? I mean, it lived at
Eric Rivera.
Levi's.
Eric Rivera lived in a trailer in Yellow Lot.
Yeah, because I remember going and he'd be like, hey, come over to my place for a beer.
Yeah.
I'm like, where do you live? He's like, right over there.
So I got a hot take story from you. Go deep into the mic for this one. No, so Eric one time invited me over for beers in the trailer, and the guy was living in it. And shout out to Eric wherever you are. I think I added you on LinkedIn recently. I think he's still a security guard, actually. And he served. He was in the military.
Yeah.
He'd always come in. We would take care of him with whatever clearance bullshit we had, and he was just a cool guy. Go to his place, have a beer after work. At the time, I was living in Gilroy, so it was kind of the drive. So I was like, shit, I can have a beer. He tells me a story, how he's like, yeah, one of my buddies had a stand post yesterday at York's house. And I said, yesterday was Thanksgiving. He's like, yeah, we have a post at Jed York's house. And I'm like, man, that sucks, dude. He's like, yeah, I was like, well, did they take care of him? That's got to be kind of cool, I guess. Jed York's house is in Los Altos for anyone wanting to look for him. I don't have the address handy, though. Apparently, this is what happened. The guy standing post gets a phone call, all right? It's Jed York. And Jed's like, hey, and he's thinking, hey, maybe he's going to come in and invite him for some turkey. And, they're having a Thanksgiving party at the York's house with all the fixings. No. Hey, we left 2 dirty diapers in the SUV. You mind throwing them out? We forgot them after we came back from the airport. Didn't serve the guy a fucking thing on an 8-hour shift. This is a true story.
On Thanksgiving?
On Thanksgiving night, guarding Jed York's house.
That's a rough one.
And if that's still a post, Jed, I hope you're feeding these guys. Because 8 hours of standing in front of who the hell's going to come into the hills and attack you anyways, right? And you have a guy from SST shivering his balls off, making $15 an hour, and you say, hey, get those 2 Huggies out of the back of the trunk, will you?
Well, but I can see why he would have that security, because isn't that around the time that they kept trying to get him, like all the fans kept get him to sell the team and, fly in those planes with the banners saying sell the team. And
I still remember a photo I have on my phone. I'll have to send it to you. You could add it to this episode of 2 girls holding a giant balloon, blown up dildo with York's name on it.
Oh, I remember that.
They hated the guy. This was when they had just got rid of Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. And
Kaepernick was still there.
They would fly planes around the stadium, fire York, get rid of York, get rid of Balky. Which Balky, anyone listening, Trent Balky, wow, that's a story in itself. Not just Trent, his daughter Ashley as well. I can get into that. But Trent Balky, the day he got fired, I was in the cash office with Ben. They walked him out, and he threw his lanyard. And so for anyone that knows credentials, rather, if you work in a stadium, you got to be credentialed. You got to have a badge. And the funny part about all this is in 2015 and 2016, my last 2 years at Levi's, they thought it was a good idea to make me in charge of credentials. So naturally, I gave myself fucking full access with escort privileges. I think my mom got to the suite. They literally put me in charge of who gets what credential. I'm like, sure, I'm going to fucking hook myself up. Why not?
Hell yeah. I think isn't that what everybody did for the Super Bowl too?
Yeah. But he comes down, Josh, and I was like, Ben, look at Balky. He's pissed. This fucker takes his lanyard off and just tosses it. And I go and grab it, and there's a picture of me somewhere out there where I'm wearing Trent Balky's credential. Give him the thumbs up, because I hated that fucker. He's the reason why Harbaugh left. Shout out to Harbaugh, who just won a national championship last week.
Yeah. So, speaking of Harbaugh, where do you think he's going to go? Think he's going to go to LA? I
think he's going to the I was going to call him San Diego Chargers. Got to be careful there. Washington Commanders, Redskins, San Diego Chargers. See, I'm an old soul. Even though I'm 37, we still call them the San Diego Chargers.
Well, we have those flags up there. So that one, the Chargers one, doesn't say San Diego, but that's what it was. And we also have the Redskins one. And St. Louis Rams. Back when, who was that guy? Reggie Bush.
Yeah, Reggie
Famous
Bush tore his ACL running to the sideline.
Yeah, for the last, he's famous for being the last person to ever get hurt playing NFL in St. Louis.
Yeah, Edward Jones Arena, I believe was.
Was that what it was called?
Yeah, I just remember the Niners always playing there. What were we saying about that with Harbaugh? He's gonna go to LA. My understanding is he's infatuated with Justin Herbert. He had told some close colleagues even a year ago, like, Herbert is the real deal. And I think if you look at that team, Josh, the Chargers have a great defense. Like, they have Khalil Mack, they have Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa's brother.
Yep.
You got the weapons on offense. I believe in Herbert as well. I do. I didn't believe in him in college, but he's made me a believer. You put Harbaugh on that team. Look what he did with the Niners with little to work with, right? I mean, on the defense, he had a lot to work with, but when he had Alex Smith he inherited, and you put him on that team, they're going to the playoffs.
Well, Alex Smith was not somebody. He wasn't bad. He just wasn't somebody. Alex Smith seemed to be consistent,
but Harbaugh made him that way. You know, he wasn't. They were booing the shit out of him. You know, they're chanting for David Carr. And I agree. Alex Smith had a new offensive coordinator every year he was in the league before Harbaugh got there. Every year. It was just turnover in that team. But, thinking about that team, Josh, they were 8-8 the year before Harbaugh got there. They went 13-3. You're telling me now this guy's going to come to the Chargers? They could easily win the division with this guy. He's that good of a coach.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think they could constantly get past the Chiefs, though?
I mean, yeah, you got the Chiefs, right, which you got Mahomes. But, I mean, look at this year. 10 games wins you the division this year, right? The Chiefs didn't have a great year. The Raiders, as we know, they're really great at horrible things, such as people like running people over and causing deaths in Las Vegas. They're great for all sorts of scams, but they're never going to win more than 6 or 7 games. That's why we shipped them out of Oakland, right? We got the filth out of the Bay Area. I actually lived in Vegas, so I kind of can talk to you about the 2 years I spent there. And my God, that logo and that team really matches the quality of people in Las Vegas. Talk about a shithole. God, I went back in time when I moved there. But
why is it that bad? For a single guy like you, I mean, Yeah,
I had fun. I had fun the first year. The strip clubs, the gambling, primarily the gambling, right? I enjoy communicating with dealers and letting them know where they stand in life versus me if I lose. But man, I don't know. It reminds me of like Grand Theft Auto. When you would just like run into somebody and be like, hey, watch it, asshole. Like, it's just a weird fucking town. Nobody has a real job. They are either a bartender or they work graveyard fucking driving somewhere, driving limousines. Like, it was hard to have community there, right? So my neighbor was a bouncer. My neighbor above me worked at Bellagio. And it's a city that was built for addicts. If you're an addict, like a sex addict, a gambling addict, an alcoholic, you would thrive in Vegas. You can't raise a family there. And anyone that tells you differently, they have an addiction they don't want to share with you.
Well, I know a couple people that, they were like the bottle service girls and things like that, and that they live down there now. And it just seems hard. I mean, I guess there's more things to do now that, sports is going down there.
So that is true. They're getting the A's. They're going to be tearing down Tropicana and building the A's stadium. They have the Golden Knights who won their trophy last year. And that's true. But here's a couple things about Vegas if anyone ever decides to move listening in. It's super windy. It's always windy in Vegas. They have monsoons in July. And God, it's just fucking allergy central. It's dry as fuck out there. Like, there's no greenery, obviously. Everything's dirt and rocks and I don't know, man. I did it. Never again. I think it's hard to leave California, how beautiful of a state we have, although Gavin Newsom's fucking it right in its ass like he did with the Niners. If anyone wants to know why the Niners are in Santa Clara, just go ask Gavin Newsom that question. He's the biggest piece of shit of all time in this state.
Well, let's get into that story. Because I know a lot of people probably don't know. They probably don't realize. They probably think it was just time. Like we're
the
engaged.
way the world used to be. Yeah. It's the problem with the world these days. It got itself in a big damn hurry.
We good? We're recording?
Yep.
Time in. All right. Sorry, everyone. We had to pause and do a little battery change on the cameras there. But I think you were talking about our boy Gavin.
Governor Newsom. Yeah, Gavin Newsom. He is the reason why the 49ers are in Santa Clara. A lot of people don't know that they were going to stay in San Francisco. But Hunters Point, which is what the city offered them to build the stadium, was a complete nightmare with infrastructure. Just the roads needed to be repaired. There's a bunch of stuff going on.
Was that Hunters Point was where they were, was where Candlestick was, right?
Basically, really close by, yeah.
Was it just going to be next door to it or something?
Pretty much. Like, not necessarily right there, but very close. A lot of people don't know Candlestick was really in Daly City, if you really want to be technical.
Actually, it was in Brisbane.
Well, I mean, there's that Daly City city limit sign. So I guess I just assume that, but you're right. It probably is Brisbane.
Because the Cow Palace was in Daly City.
Yeah.
It was at one point the Cow Palace was the tallest building in San Francisco.
The Cow Palace. That's right. You did the payroll there and Palo Alto at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I went there because the San Francisco Bulls were there. You remember that AAA hockey team during the NHL strike?
Yeah. I just remember growing up as a kid in the Central Valley, be like, "Come on down to the Cow Palace this Saturday. We're gonna have a horse showing." Like,
kids $8.
Kids under 6 coming free. Get in before 3 p.m. for a free keychain.
Monster Jam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come see Gravedigger. Get a picture with the truck. But Gavin Newsom, he really fucked him because basically the city was like, hey, we want you here, but we're not willing to pay for shit. You have to pay out of pocket. And the Yorks, being the cheapos they are not going to pay for it. So then here comes City of Santa Clara, where I think he wanted that stadium there. That's where the money is. That's where the Googles are, the Facebooks, the Amazons. You know, that's where the money is, the Yahoos. And so you go to a game now, I mean, 99% of the suites are filled with people wearing shirt and ties. You know, no one's wearing, you know.
Yeah, and it's just gonna it's getting that way with more stadiums.
Yeah.
You know?
When we used to go to Candlestick, man, the person in the front row all the way to the rafters was painted face, jersey, Joe Schmo.
Had mustache and a sweater on.
Yeah.
You know?
Smelled like Marlboro mediums, you know? But now you go to a Niners game, it's like, I'm sorry, am I in a event center, airport, or am I in a championship game here? You know?
Yeah, am I at Dreamforce?
Yeah.
In San Francisco? Everybody's got the little lanyards around. Yeah, but it's just, it is super corporatized now. I you know, you're not the first to say it. Everybody that I've talked to about that's been in the business, you know, because I talked to those, you remember I worked at the A's too.
Yeah.
And I talked to those guys and some of them have been there pretty much since the Coliseum is built, you know?
Well, at least they're offering organic coup, right? They're very, very health conscious at these stadiums. What happened to eating like shit at a football game, like America?
When I worked at the A's, we got one thing I got every single day was a chicken and waffle sandwich.
As you should.
Yeah, it was delicious. It had syrup baked into the waffles, and of course some fried chicken on there. And I mean, what more do you need?
Well,
some cheese, I think it had too.
And you got that when you were at the A's?
Yeah.
I'm sure they prepared about 50 of those to cover the full attendance and yourself.
No doubt. Yeah.
Nobody goes
on
to
a
A's
hard
games.
day. Yeah, on a big one.
My God, I've seen more people at a Walmart at 2 a.m. inside of it than a fucking A's game. I actually worked at A's event too, and they're like, "Yeah, I did when I worked for Aramark."
Oh,
in 2018, I worked for Aramark during the A's season. And they're like, Alan, I was still in HR at this point. I don't know how I was ever in HR, by the way. I was an HR nightmare, but I was somehow an HR manager.
How did you manage that?
I mean, the same way Two-Face managed it in Batman. I don't know. You have multiple personalities, dude.
You just were really good with everybody's names and remembering everybody's names.
Pretending like I care. Hey, Bill, how's the kid? Thanks.
Yeah.
We'll get behind the stand, make me another hot dog.
And so like people would respond to you if you called them to have them come in, because you had to reach out to like each event at least 200 people or something like that, right?
200 people, and I didn't get a single lay out of that. You know, for having all that authority, other than that MPO we discussed. But the A's was interesting because they'd be like, Alan, go walk the concourse, make sure everybody's in uniform. I mean, my God, I was afraid to go in some of those stands, the kind of workers we had. I mean, I don't know if they did criminal background checks, face tattoos. I think people were on parole while they were serving us. I mean, and by the way, that stadium was just shitty. You walk the concourse and you're like, fuck, man, this is unpaved. Like, where are we?
Have you walked across any of the bubbles in the pavement? Because there's bubbles that are in the pavement. You could just walk on them, but there's no way you could take them out. I look at it as like a zit in the pavement. And it's like, I want to cut that thing open and maybe get some relief in there. And, if there's anything in there, I could squeeze it out, but
They need to tear that arena or that stadium apart, man.
Why?
What good is it doing? It's an eyesore on the freeway, man. I've walked in there a couple of years ago, and for the next Jurassic World, they ought to house the T-Rex in that place, because that's just what it looks like. It's just a rat's nest, dude.
Well, there is a lot of wildlife there. That's for sure. But it's got history. It sucks when those things get taken down. Like it sucks when Candlestick. And what are they doing? They're not doing shit with that land.
When they built Candlestick, when they were going to close it, it was going to be like low income apartments.
Right.
And I recently visited Candlestick 2 months ago. I went to Pier 39 with my cousin. He lives out in Daly City, so we hung out. I always stop by. I always exit Candlestick just because I have to, and it's depressing. They've literally turned it into a ditch of nothing.
Yeah. I've heard that it could be like a shopping center too, like a strip mall.
Well, the fact no one wants to invest in San Francisco with all the robberies.
Yeah. Well, why are out there, only people that live right in those apartments are going to shop there. Why are you going to go all the way out there for anything?
Yeah, nobody in Jamestown, that street where those houses, I don't know. The city, again, they don't care. And look at all the people pulling out of San Francisco. The Westfield Mall pulled out of San Francisco. A couple other big retailers did, big box stores. With all the theft, who the hell wants to build any kind of shopping center in San Francisco?
Yeah, I know.
They ought to just have left the stadium, and they would have made revenue off people just coming to see it.
Right, but isn't it in a national park? Isn't that a national park right there? So there's probably all kinds of red tape to build anything there, right?
Yeah, you're right. There is a national park. But what kind of a park is it? It's literally some benches and a few trees.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. But when I retired from sports and I went back to work in San Francisco, and there I would leave and I would go get my lunch at the same little place in one of these office buildings that this Asian couple owned. It was a little deli underneath, right?
Oh, I know which one. I used to go there before games.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would go there. I'd go there every day, get a sandwich, go to Candlestick Park, and just eat it on a bench and watch the waves and watch the little ground squirrels go. And shit washes up on the river. You see on the beach.
Sure.
You see all kinds of. I remember one time I saw a dolphin around there. It was a brown dolphin.
Really?
Yeah, you see. Yeah, they're in there. They're there.
Brown dolphin. Mm-hmm. I guess. Yeah.
I think maybe it's a porpoise. I don't know. Drew, can we look that up? Brown dolphin in San Francisco. What are those things called?
It's funny you mentioned that deli. It looks like it's not going to even be in there. That building is just like a standard office building, and then you're like, oh, there's a deli. So we would go there, stock up on sunflower seeds or whatever the hell we needed, walk into Candlestick.
Yeah.
We used to park in that lot.
People used to sell beer on that road. Just open up a cooler and be like, $5 for a beer.
You know, that's another thing is that you go to a game now with the scalpers. It's not like before where they're holding the tickets. They're just like, I need tickets. I sell tickets. But do you really trust these guys to know? Like half of them don't know how to use a phone. How are they going to transfer me the tickets?
I mean, I would.
Because there's no more hard tickets anymore, right?
I've never bought tickets like that. I have sold tickets like that and just been like, hey, I remember I went to, it was some show at the Concord Pavilion and my wife was supposed to go with me and she couldn't go. I still bought the tickets and I was just like, hey, do you want this ticket? And just walk in with me, you know?
Yeah.
And so obviously they're good. Just had to leave their friends, you know, behind, but whatever. I wouldn't trust that kind of thing. You know, I always have to get it beforehand.
I got burned. I went to a San Francisco Giants game once, and the guy sold me and my buddy 2 tickets, and mine scanned, and his didn't. It was the same barcode. Luckily, it was the Giants, and the tickets were $10, but still, like, yeah, man, I'm the same way. I usually just buy from these websites now just because I don't want to get to the gate, especially for a Niners game, and be told, sorry, there's an issue.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because you're set to go to it, right? And, of course, the Niners game would probably be a lot more than a Giants game.
Yeah, I had I love the 49ers so much that I remember one year my buddy was driving us to Candlestick during a preseason game, a useless preseason game, and there was traffic in the lot, in the main lot, and I got out of his SUV and ran to the gate just so I wouldn't miss the game. Who the hell does that for a damn preseason game?
Well, preseason game, I mean, a lot of times when people can go to a game, they probably can't afford much more than a preseason game.
I mean, Jay, our buddy, you would always say this is a story, is going to a 49ers preseason game at Candlestick. He said, he's like, yeah, it looks like Turlock out here. Because anyone that couldn't afford to go to a Niners game would make sure they went to a preseason game because that's the only game of the year they were going to be able to afford, which was true.
Yeah.
I had to beg, borrow, and steal, man, to get to Candlestick. Hell, now Levi's is only 15 minutes from my house. I actually went to Levi's Stadium. This is I'm not making this up. At 12:45, I left my apartment for a game that started at 1:05. I have a parking pass. Shout out to my plug Javier, who's got parking passes for Levi's. I got in my car. I got to Patrick Henry, that street.
Oh yeah.
And I parked in the parking garage at 1 o'clock. And by 1:15, I was sitting in a chair watching the game. That's how quick I got to the stadium.
Damn.
It pays to know people, man. The employee parking. You just get in, you get out.
Yellow Lot. Shout out to Yellow Lot.
Shout out to Javier, my man. If you need any staffing issues, please visit elitestaffing.com.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap up here. What do you want to tell anybody? Anything or?
Well, it was a pleasure being on. I don't know. I don't have anything else. I think that this was fun. We should do it again sometime. And if you were offended by anything I said, well, take the tampon out of your ass.
All right. Let's go get some lunch.
All right.